I'm excited to chat with Tiana Pomaybo today on the Awaken Feminine podcast. Tiana is a transformational teacher, leading intuitive purpose and business coach, life strategist, founder and CEO of TM International, a company that helps solopreneurs clarify their purpose and make money doing it, and organizations refine their messaging for epic purpose-filled branding. And I know she has so much love and wisdom to share with us today. She's a fellow Aussie, also in Western Australia. Welcome to the show, Tiana.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited for our conversation today. But before we dive in, I always love to ask my guests this question, and that is, what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
My definition of awakened feminine is having a strong core and an open heart.
That's a beautiful definition. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Well, let's jump right in. I'll really love you to share with us a bit more about who you are and why you do what you do.
So that's such a broad question. Who am I? I mean, women are so multifaceted anyway, right? So
Yes.
like I'm a mother, I'm a business owner, I'm all of the things, but who am I? Let's get into why I do what I do. So I believe that I'm here and that every person is here for a purpose. And we all kind of, the reason why I started doing what I was doing is because I've had a long, what seems like a treacherous journey of just continually learning and growing. Like, I feel like I was born like pretty much in the depths of hell in this little place called Pueblo in the States in Colorado. And there was just a lot of chaos and drama and what seemed like there was no opportunity. And so I grew up in a family that had like a very survivalistic mentality. And then I basically packed up my family and moved countries with 8 suitcases and $2,000 in the bank. We like sold all of our furniture and traveled and landed in Western Australia. And the way that the Australian government supports their people is very different. So there's not so much of that survivalistic mentality. And so I guess that brought me to a space of like, oh, I can see the very dualistic nature of the way that people think and how that feeds into their business and their life. And so what I believe will help shift the world is that if people learn how to be more purpose-based. So purpose as in being like contribution to the whole. And the reason why you're here and put on this planet. So if you think about little cells in our body, each one of them have their own specific reason why they exist, right? There's red blood cells, there's white blood cells. And if you think about it, we like humans and every other living thing or creature has a purpose. So that's why it's so integral for people's mental and emotional health to feel as if they're part of something. So rather than looking to others to define who we are, we get to define what we're here for. And we get to tap into like our contribution to the whole. So that's really how I got started working in the area that I do.
What was the catalyst that really sparked you to really dive into what you're doing now, really helping people to define their purpose and branding? Because I mean, there must have been an event or maybe something that you went through, which then you went, actually, I can help people do this and do it better than anyone else.
It's really my life. I think the catalyst, though, as far as really it was the moving to a new country and having to redefine who I was as a person, because you don't have all those limiting beliefs or perceptions that others have of you. And so it's almost like when you move countries, you have this freedom then to define who you want to be. So it's a little bit harder when you're stuck in the role of being the friend or something like that. I didn't have any of that. So I pretty much had complete freedom to redefine what I wanted to do. So when I landed in the country, I had a university degree in marketing and communications. And so I got a couple corporate jobs that were working for international companies, whether it was nonprofit. I worked in the retail space, and I found that creative space was really conducive. But what always ended up happening was that I was always getting quite bitter at the person who was my boss. Not all bosses, I should say. Some of them were really good, but I always felt constricted in the role that I was in. And then probably about 4 years ago, I ended up getting a divorce. And my husband at the time, my ex-husband, decided to leave the country, and I was on my own. And so I had to basically figure out how to support 2 children on my own. And so when I was in the corporate role and there was another guy that ended up coming in. And like I said, it was just a constant battle of like searching for that freedom and that purpose within the role, which I never ended up finding. And so finally I came to the conclusion of like, no one is going to give me the role that I want. So I have to define the role that I want, and it's going to be purpose-based. So when I left the corporate world, which was probably about 2 years in October, basically I had taken, so I'm a master practitioner of NLP as well. So I have the coaching skills. And what I did was I merged the two. So I figure you get trained in all of the things that you intrinsically want to know if you're living in an intuitive life.
Yeah.
And NLP was the skills that actually changed and transformed the way that I thought about things, from victim mentality to then basically, I don't know, what some people would call manifestation mentality. So it was a mixture of all of those events as to why I kind of chose to do the things that I'm doing. And the reason why, I guess I wouldn't say that I think there's a whole emergence of feminine leaders that are standing up and doing the same work, right? Because we're living in a world where it's based on materialistic endeavors. So any kind of manifestation teaching is all about getting the money. When I left the corporate world and I started doing that, I started business coaching and I started teaching about the money. Yeah. And then what I found is that it didn't align, because I was getting people in the door that were focused on the money and not on the impact and serving. So this year was a big year for me, a big year of growth and learning. And then when I kind of shifted and transformed, it was more about the impact. So I had the same offer. So people still get to make, really, really good money, but instead of focusing on the money, they're focusing on the impact. And that's really what transformed the way that I do things, because people are getting a lot better results in their sales and marketing. And when they're coming from a purpose-based or impact-based business model.
I love that. It is so true, because you see all the ads on Facebook, how to make more money, being a coach, but it's never focusing on the impact and the purpose. And that is really the core of everything that you do if you actually want to live a life that is so aligned, because the money is not going to make you, no amount of money is going to make you happy if it's not aligned with your purpose and, the impact that you want to make in this world. So I just love, what you're doing. I want to ask you, lost my train of thought about your line of work. So being impactful. And I know with your business, you talk about how to do things your own way. That's where I was getting to. Do things your own way, because I'm a coach myself, and I've, done 1,000,001 courses, and they're always like, you have to do this, 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 and this. And then there's all these checklists and things that you're supposed to do. And even if they don't feel right, you should do them anyway, because that's the model that we've, created that works. But I know with your work, you talk about defining things your way and doing things your own way. Can you talk a bit more about that and how you discovered that you don't have to do everything someone else is doing, and actually you can create your own way.
Yeah. So I came across several models that kind of redefined the way that I thought about the way that we do business. So I hired a business coach back when I first started my business. And it's that same teaching of the only thing that was different was they started focusing on what you stand for instead of just a regular brand exercise. But they still did the whole creating the funnels, doing the social media, doing all of the things. But really what it comes down to, and I actually lost my train of thought just now as well.
Must be contagious.
I'm like, I know this is really, really good, but wait, what was the question? Just ask me the question again.
The question is, how did you realize that you can do things your own way rather than following like someone else's formula?
Okay, here it is. All right. So the models, right? So human design was one of the models that got introduced to me probably at the beginning of the year. And it really changed the way I thought about individualism and the way that we do things. So it's coming from a spiritual perspective. And I don't know if you know about human design.
Yes, I love it.
But it's awesome. I'm a projector. And basically it defines within a certain, like, I don't necessarily agree with all of it, but it does give you a good idea of so it's called the science of individuation, which means that each person has their own individual thing that they can add to the whole, and each person's energy works in a completely different way. So if people just accept that they are different, and that if they have the same vision or thing that they want to achieve, that there is really no competition and that you don't have to be good at everything. Then there was another model that came into play, which was wealth dynamics, which is basically a model that teaches, or that I guess highlights the things that you're really good at. So it talks about people who, for example, are accountants, so that are really, really good at the numbers and how they can build businesses. And then people who are stars, who are like people that like Oprah Winfrey, who will make their money getting, money through podcasts and standing up in front of crowds, which is me. And then there's your supporters, which are really good at being like the CEO supporters because they're really good with people. So usually a CEO is like a creator or a star, and they need somebody to actually manage their people. So it was like looking at these models and understanding it from a spiritual level and a materialistic level, I kind of realized that, the way that business coaches were teaching was that you had to be everything. You had to have your finger on everything. You had to be good at everything in order to be successful, when really you just had to find your flow space, get good enough at something in order to get the clients, and then make enough money to delegate, because otherwise you're just going to get burnt out. And you're not going to appreciate yourself for your differences. And you're always going to be looking to someone else to define who you are and what you want to be and how you make the money and what kind of strategy you use. When really it's moving from an intuitive space of, all right, well, this is what I know that I'm good at. And it's okay if I just do these things and the money will come.
I love that. So much wisdom in that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because like I was saying, there's so much formulas out there when, you can just create your own and be okay. I love the delegation part, because we do, like, once you step into the online space, as you would know, is like, you need to be everything. And that's why there's so many people after they start, they stop, because it is stressful because they're trying to be
and they get burnt out. Yeah, they hit burnout, and then it's like, oh, well, like it just proves themselves wrong, right? So now I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to make some income. Don't care if it all goes to me. I hire a copywriter to get all my landing pages done, even though I could do it because I've been in the marketing world, right? Yeah. I hire people to build all of my automation for me because it's not my flow space.
Yeah.
So if you define your core messaging and branding, and this is why it's so important to define that, because it doesn't matter which outlet you use, whether it be podcast or social media or YouTube or Google, as long as you have the foundation of the core messaging right, and it's strong enough to stand out, and you're speaking to a specific niche, then you could go out networking. Like literally I get clients all the time without even being online and getting clients through just speaking the love that I have for what I do.
Yeah. I love that. And talking about speaking the love, how people always talk about finding your passion, right? And then there's the other people that go, oh, you don't need to find your passion. You just need to, just do something and just be committed and, just keep going. Which camp are you on? And like for people that still haven't been able to find their passion, what's something that will help them to kind of really navigate what their purpose is? Because really when you find your purpose, that's, that usually goes hand in hand. Can you talk a bit about that for us?
Yeah. So first I would say that most people don't explore because they're scared that they're not going to do it correctly, or that people are going to judge them, or that they have to spend money on the investments to get the skills. And so they end up holding themselves back because once you're one way, then you can't be any other way. So that's the first step, right? The second step is actually getting very clear on who you are and what you want. Because a lot of our success is based on measures of money or house or cars or all of these materialistic things, which are all comfy and great. But still at the end of the day, let's say you have a $3 million business. Like you said, you're never going to be happy if you have a $3 million business and it's not aligned. You can make money literally doing anything. So it's defining and aligning your values. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. Totally agree with that. Can we jump back to a bit more about your personal story, if you don't mind sharing a bit more?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Which part did you?
Yeah, when you were talking about that at the beginning, very much growing up in a survivalist kind of family and then packing your family out to just move. Do you mind giving us a bit of maybe unpacking that a bit and how that has kind of really allowed you to move into like change the trajectory of your life?
All right. So this comes back to the awakened feminine stuff, right? So being an awakened feminine is not easy work because you have to delve into all of the things, all of the yucky, painful things before you can actually get aligned. So one, it does have to do with values, but you actually have to delve into the pain and not avoid it with alcohol and drugs and that sort of thing, because that's the only way that you can see divinity itself. So if I take a look back at my history and all of the things that I had to go through when I was younger, I actually wrote a post recently because I've been doing some internal work and realizing a lot of what stemmed from what I didn't take the chances on stemmed from the lack of self-belief and my ability to stand up for what I thought was right and me just wanting to fit in. So I grew up in a family of pretty much each person had their own addiction of some sort. My mom really liked alcohol. When I was little, I walked into my dad's room and found a bag of cocaine. I had a brother who ended up getting into opiates and ended up getting a heroin addiction. So I would walk into his room and he would be laying on the floor with needles hanging out of his arms. The place that I grew up in, like you would just be walking on the street and people would be passed out with kids in the back of the car. This stuff really happens. And it's because of their lack of ability to see the opportunities. So that's the foundation that I grew up in, thinking that this was all normal and this is how life was.
Yeah.
And I guess I hit a point I was 19 when I had babies because I couldn't see any other opportunity for growth. So to get away from my family, I had basically married the first guy that wanted to marry me, and we had babies together, which I am super grateful for. But he never ended up really supporting me. And so I was never in my feminine. I was always in my masculine. I was always the provider. I was always doing things. And eventually I just burnt out, right? Because being a feminine leader means that you're not doing things like you need to have goals, right? But you need to be fairly balanced. It's not one or the other. You have to be playful and intuitive and fun. And then you have this other side of you that wants to hit goals and wants to do those things, but it has to be balanced. And so when I decided to move to another country, it was like I was working 3 jobs. I had 2 kids. I got a university degree. I was doing all these things, hit burnout, was starting to affect my health. And finally, I just decided, like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. So thankfully, my family was here in Western Australia, so it was fairly easy to migrate. But I made that choice because I had to get myself out of that hellhole that I was experiencing. And I knew that even if I didn't know what was going to happen, right? Because you sell all your material things that you're used to, and you're moving away from the family that usually supports you. And it really allows you to trust something bigger than yourself and experience things that you would have never experienced otherwise. And like I said, in that there's a fear, but there's also a lot of freedom in making the transition and knowing that seeing the experiences that come after the fear. Yeah. So it's moving through fear. Yeah.
That's amazing. I wanted to ask you, being in that space growing up, did you feel quite different? Because you obviously didn't get into the addiction like the rest of your family.
No.
Yeah. So like,
I felt very different. There was a time period when I kind of tried to dabble in it because I thought it was normal. Like there were times when, you know, I would go out to parties and drink like the teenagers would, or like I had a friend, cheerleader, got involved with the wrong guy, ended up dying at like 18 from an overdose. Right. So, what I ended up doing is I left school because I just couldn't be around it anymore. Like I was quite sensitive to those types of energies. And I thought something was actually wrong with me because I didn't fit in, right? I didn't want to make those choices for myself. And at the age of 17, I quit school and decided to go to university instead. And thankfully they let me, right? So I had a very early start on my career, which I'm very grateful for. But at the same time, it was almost like I got crucified for being different. So you had to really tap into that internal compass, that intuitive nature. But it was almost like I had this internal compass from when I was very young. So, you know, it's something you can't really explain. But I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah. Thank goodness you listened to your internal compass and look at where you are now. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, was there a point when because, you know, like you always had this compass within you, but a lot of times we don't trust it. We don't believe, like the intuition has always been like, you know, people say that is woo-woo, but everyone's intuitive, right?
Yeah.
When did you really start tapping in and using your intuition rather than kind of just going, like listening to it subconsciously? When was it that you consciously go, I'm going to listen to my intuition?
It probably wasn't until, to be honest, it probably wasn't until this year that I consciously knew that I was listening to my intuition.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because, like I said, most of the world doesn't live that way. They try to avoid their pain by drinking or doing drugs. And so, you know, you always think that actually like there's something wrong with you. So this year I finally met, I guess what some people would consider like a master or like a very intuitively spiritual man, and ended up guiding me kind of to see, it was probably several people that ended up just guiding me to see that actually what I was experiencing was actually like quite a sensitivity, and that I didn't have to put it away, that actually it was quite beautiful. Right. So we talk about Christ consciousness and the ability to love no matter what. And it was funny because I actually came to the conclusion probably only last week or something like that, that even though I had experienced these things like people stealing from me and drugs and all of that stuff, that I still in myself could find love for those people because they were actually hurting.
Mm.
So I've always had this intuitive capability to just tap into people and see where they were hurting and what kinds of things that they needed to deal with. I would say that everyone has their own intuitive superpowers, being very different. So some people are intuitive to ideas, right? And then some people are very intuitive as far as rapport and building that intuition with other people. So some people would call it like a psychic intuition. There's all kinds of different things that people can tap into. And once again, we're not all alike.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We're all unique in our own ways. Were there any specific things that really helped you to start tapping into your intuition, or was it just like having those guidance from the people around you? Is like when the student is ready, the teachers appear.
Pretty much. Yeah. It was like once the student, the teacher, what you said. I kind of always knew it was there, but it's once you start to get a little bit stronger in yourself, once you hit your 30s, you realize that everything you experienced was for a reason. And you start to see the patterns that have been kind of cultivated in your life to end up at this specific point in time. And so because you have life experience and those things to kind of show, it's almost like a showing. It's like a knowing, right? So if we talk about the awakened woman, it's like as soon as you get older to a point where you can observe these things from a space of experience, then that's when you can tap into your intuition, because teenage girls, are trying to fit in. And, when you're a child, you don't even think about things. You just kind of do things and learn from other people. So we're very conditioned by other people's beliefs. And it's not until you realize and you start questioning those things that you really start tapping into what's true for you. And you start to build that, what some people would say the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. You start to access those things from that space.
Yeah.
So it's feeling intuitive. Yeah, you can be very feeling intuitive, but it's also seeing the patterns that are larger than yourself.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the interactions and the serendipitous events and all of the things, right? That's all curated by something that's much larger than we are.
Yeah. We the number of times that the universe, like you say, God, whatever your beliefs are, has taught me that I have no control really over my life. Even though we all think we have control and we try and control everything. Yeah, we don't. And like you said, it's when you just have to just trust, and trusting is one of the hardest things to do, to just let go of control and trust that everything's going to turn out okay and be fine. When you're not in a place where you feel fine, it's like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but we'll just go with it.
And it's funny too, because like a lot of people will avoid, that's why I talk about the avoidance of pain so much, is because we live in a dualistic world that not everyone wants to pay attention to, right? So we all want to experience all these positive emotions and positive life events, when we all know that in the crisis spaces, when we're feeling totally lost and have no idea, that's when instead of picking up the drink bottle, you're delving into the books and you're reading and you're growing through that pain instead of avoiding the pain.
Yes.
So then you start to live from a place of joy, because it doesn't matter what happens in life, that, the friction is being caused is only for your own growth and evolution.
Yeah. It's always for your highest good, because half the time when you don't listen, that's when when universe is like, come on, listen now, slap you across the face. How many times do I need to slap you? Now it's going to be, something major that you need to deal with, rather than
it's going to be like a health event or a loss of a job or something like that.
Yeah.
It's happened. It happens to all of us. We just need to pay attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
I want to ask you, actually, you talked about, being awakened feminine, you have to go through the pain and looking at everything that you've gone through in your life. How does that affect people finding their purpose? So in the work that you do people need to go back and, check in and see how they can become that awakened person and then find their purpose? Or can it be, done mutually exclusively?
So I do it mutually exclusively.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because if you're too focused on the pain, it will literally tear your world apart. So you have to look forward to something so that you know that you're going to be okay. So what you're doing is you're changing a desire into an aspiration. So you're moving through the pain. How I explain it is a tunnel where there's light on both ends, but you can't see the light at the other end because there's stuff that you need to move. So let's imagine that the business side of things, or the purpose or the evolution of whatever that might be, is at the other end. That's that light. And it might shift and change when you start moving the stuff inside, which is fine, but at least you're focused on something that's greater than what you're experiencing right now. And then when you move into that pain, it's like you can then pull yourself back out because you have something amazing to focus on. And that's really the space of like manifestation, is you can imagine feelings that are going to occur when you've accomplished this thing, or when you make a difference in the life of this person. And when it comes to your purpose and your story, especially with coaches and people who are doing healing work or spiritual work, is that you've been put here on this planet to experience those things, not for yourself, but to help other people who might not be aware of the lighted path, right? So it's in the aha moments that you experience that you can then find your purpose with. And obviously, like, sometimes you do have to get certifications. Sometimes you do have to, do the material thing in order to get the result. But yeah, it's very much like, for me, focusing on both, because the very fact that you want to evolve and grow is going to end up shifting and changing what's in here anyway.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. And such a great way to put it, to really see how that works with the lights on both sides of the tunnel. I love that analogy. You were just talking about, I hate it when I do this, because I'm like, okay, I need to answer a question, but I need to say this first. Like,
I do the same thing. It's okay.
It's okay. I'll come back to it. I'll remember later. But I wanted to ask you about the fear, moving through the fear.
Yeah.
People, especially in the last 2.5 years, there's been a lot of people that that want to go into business, or they've realized that how they've been living has not been conducive to the soul, has not been so aligned. So it's like, okay, I want to do this, but I'm really scared. Can you give us, our listeners or viewers, some tips on, like, what's the best way to start moving through the fear?
Well, I think one is uncovering what the fear actually is, because if it's an unconscious fear, so our subconscious keeps all of those fears, like, all the fears are to keep us safe. You have to discern between a real fear, if you're actually going to get hurt doing it, or if it's just a fear of judgment, a fear of success. You have to define that. And all of that is conditioned by our past, right? So when we're born, we don't usually have a whole lot of fears. It's usually because, our parents told us to not share our emotions, or our parents fought about money, or they told us that we had to work hard in order to get the results, or things like that, right? So it's usually based on past conditioning. Once you are aware of where the belief comes from, then you can essentially add a more positive view to it. So instead of being away motivated from the fear, you're towards motivated something, like I said, that's bigger than that fear.
Yeah.
So once you start to take the action and you have that goal in mind or that vision that you want to achieve, then the fear might still be there, or there might be a tiny kernel of truth in that fear, but it doesn't control you. And so you start doing the action and the procrastination goes, and you're so passionate or whatever about what you're doing that it doesn't really have control over you anymore.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Tiana, with everything, that you've experienced in your life so far, if you could time travel back to, a younger version of Tiana, what would be that key piece of advice that you would give her?
I was such I was a really happy little girl. I was like this little girl with curly little blonde hair, and like my family, like my cousins and stuff would they would make me like little flower crowns and stuff. I just felt like a little princess. So I think what I would probably tell her is that, you always are that divine princess. You always are the divinity itself. And so if anybody tries to put you down or tell you that you're not good enough, or, that fear is kicking in, just know that you are wherever you're supposed to be. And like we were talking about, moving from that intuitive space, and also like be okay with people helping you. Because that for a long time was something that I avoided, is people helping me. I wanted to be so independent, and I didn't want to pay for any help. I didn't want to invest in myself. I didn't want to do those things. And as soon as I did, I started turning back into that little happy girl, singing and dancing and doing things where I just didn't care about what other people thought anymore.
I love that. Such a beautiful, message for your little girl. Yeah. Yeah. Because we forget that we are good enough. We are that divine princess, like you said, because as we grow up, we start believing that we're not those things. So thank you for sharing that. And asking for help. That is such a hard thing for most people to do. Can you share a bit about, I know you talk about, delegating and, getting the help, investing in that. But even just like, if you're sick, asking someone to look after your children for like an hour so you can have a bit of rest. Simple things like that, we find it so hard to do. What, and you said you had trouble before. So what was it that made you turn around and go, actually, I need to ask for help?
Okay. So I went the total opposite way, considering my background. What I was addicted to was high achieving and perfectionism, because I didn't want to be anything like what I had experienced when I was little. So the opposite of that is addiction to, achieving and getting certificates and making sure that I was good enough.
Yeah.
And when you're a perfectionist, you don't like anybody's input because that shows your imperfection. And so what I really had to come to terms with is my imperfection and how beautiful that was, because we're all imperfect. Like nothing is perfect in the universe. It just is. So once you come to that place of like, oh, I am imperfect. Oh, I can be me. Oh, I'm really good at some things and I'm really shitty at some things. Then I'm like, it's okay to like not be competitive. It's okay to just be relaxed and be good at some things and not others. And just be honest and authentic about it. Because when you're not trying to hide, like when you become so open and authentic as a person, you can look at all the shitty bits and be like, oh, I love those too. Those are cool. Just like all the beautiful and perfect stuff.
Yeah.
And so that allows you to like stop being in fight or flight. It allows you to stop being in perfectionist mode. It allows you to delegate. It allows you to ask for help. So it's really deep internal work. Like you can't just, switch these things around, but that's one of the things, is ask for help in doing that. So
yes.
whether it's it's you or whether it's me or some other coach or whatever it might be, like it's okay to invest in yourself in that space because it is totally worth it.
Yes. I totally resonate with your story because I grew up a high achiever perfectionist. So I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
So I totally get what, everything that you just talked about. I was like, yep, 100%. That is exactly what I had to go through. And yes, if you're even having an inkling of starting to really become so aligned, then get the help. Like Tiana said, doesn't matter who it's from. If you resonate with that person, if you're feeling, the call, do it because it's the best way. Yeah. It's the best way. Yes.
Yeah.
It's your intuition telling you.
It is.
And I think this is a beautiful spot to, wrap up. I love how we just asking for help kind of brings it all back to the beginning when you said your definition of an awakened feminine is having an open heart. And that comes back to you being open to ask for help and, loving people for, even if they don't treat you the best, having that open heart, that is just beautiful. So thank you so much, Tiana. I want to ask you one last question before we wrap up. What is setting your soul on fire right now?
What did I write? I was actually thinking about that earlier and I can't remember what I wrote, but it was, I guess it's knowing like that humans actually, like there's so much that we can, like us as leaders can stand up and teach, right? So leaders are the ones that stand up when everyone else is sitting down.
Yes.
And so as we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is the feminine leadership space,
yes,
I see so much shifting and changing. And I know that it's not all me that has to do the work, but there is massive amounts of people standing up for what's right. So like you said, having that strong core and that open heart and not being judgmental, but seeing that people actually do need help. That's what sets my heart on fire or my soul on fire, because it's like, there's so much space for evolution and faith, not in a biblical term, right? But faith is, and hope is having the faith in good.
Yes.
And not bad. That good will always prevail. So as much shitty things as we see in the world that are going on right now, things are shifting and changing and evolving. And that is a very peaceful place to be.
That's beautiful. I can feel your passion and your energy around that. So thank you for sharing that. And Tiana, thank you so much. I've loved our conversation today. Thank you for sharing your love and wisdom. If people want to find out more about you and how they can work with you, where should they go?
Yeah, so they can find me on Facebook, so Tiana Pomaybo, or they can find me on Instagram, Tiana Pomaybo, and also tianapomaybo.com. I'm building a new website. It won't be up quite yet, but they can find me on there as well.
Amazing. I'll have all your details in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really, really awesome.
Thank you.